What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. The RADX7 is going on the dyno, and we got to get this thing ready to go on the dyno. So in the last 3 weeks, the engine lost a bearing. We rebuilt it. We put it all back together. I've got a small oil leak right now, and I have a new fancy aluminum radiator for this deal. In addition to, we improved our crankcase ventilation. So unfortunately, the dyno, we're just going to be sitting on the hub dyno, so we really shouldn't have any oil slosh issues. Before we can go, I need to install my intake. I noticed whenever I was driving this car around without my big intake horn thing on there, this big guy, so this whole 4-inch intake tube goes from the turbo down through that hole, and you can see the concrete down there. The air filter actually lives up in here in front of the wheel, kind of behind my valence. What that does, it gives me a bunch of fresh cold air. But here's what it doesn't do when it's not installed, is restrict the airflow to where my tune is happy. I didn't really think it was going to make that big of a difference trying to drive it around without the air filter, but on tip-in, whenever I'm stabbing the throttle and it's gasping for a bunch of air, it's getting a whole bunch of air because there's no intake and it's running lean. So we're going to put the intake on, make sure that issue is fixed, because while that's happening, fuel pressure is staying rock solid. Everything else, we didn't change anything. The intake ports are still the same, like everything's the same. So the only thing different is the intake. So let's pop that on. We're going to take this thing for a quick drive just to see, go up and down the street once or twice, bring it back in here, and then we're going to address the new radiator, hook up the dual electric fans, and look at getting some ducting built to go around the radiator and connect my lower valence shark mouth cool air dam thing to the bottom of the new radiator, so that way all the air that comes in the front of the car has to go through the coolers. We can keep this thing working efficient and cool and looking cool with the new radiator in there instead of, the bunk broken one. So let's get this up in the air, take my wheel off so I can put this in there. It's kind of a pain to get it all in and out without my tire off, and then we'll be ready to rip. Some 10W30 oil in the car right now, really trying to flush that through really quick, and then I'm going to change it back to 20W50 before I go to the dyno. Figure a little bit thinner of a oil for a couple heat cycles, just help flush everything out. well, everything was literally perfect until I got back right pulling in the door, and I lost my bleed on my clutch. I was pushing the clutch pedal in, it wasn't doing anything. So, oh yeah, it helps if you, right there, if you have your clutch line loose while you're driving, then your hydraulic clutch isn't going to work. Duh. I bet if you notice where this dash 4 fitting is, right? It's right above my little block off pedestal. I bet when I put the engine in and was sliding the engine back into the transmission, that would be lefty-loosey on the bottom of that fitting. I probably hit the fitting and knocked it loose. Because literally I pulled right up into here. I'm like, oh, we're all good. Click, turn the camera off. We're making it back in the garage under its own power. Coolant temps are good. Everything was a successful test drive, right? That's what's going through my head. And I pushed the clutch in to come up the like crest of the driveway here into the shop. And it literally just kept driving. And in that moment, I freaked out. I pulled the handbrake, pulled it out of gear, and shut the, got the car stopped, shut it off. The clutch wouldn't pump back up. So I guess now I have to bleed the clutch. But that's a good thing to notice, figure out, to test drive. That's why we test drive. So that was good. My stab the throttle feel where it was like leaning out before fixed with the intake on. So simply just when you run a more free flowy air cleaner, or if you change to run no intake, or if you just run like a turbo guard, it is going to make a bunch more power. Your throttle response is going to be better than my case where I just have access to super cold air instead of sucking in air from the engine bay. It did maintain its coolant temperature the whole ride, so we sat right at 180 degrees, even with the little radiator and the bunk little fan and all that. But that just means no blown coolant seals, because when you're stacking these engines up really fast, it's very easy to overlook getting a coolant seal twisted. You're putting the iron on and you just can't wait to be done with stacking your engine, especially when you spent every waking late night working on it for the last 2 weeks, and you get it stacked up and you could have pinched one. I didn't pressure test it. I just put it in the car the next day and it's like, we'll find out. So happy that it pressure tested itself. We're good. Let's look at this big radiator, and I think it's this side. I can feel something. I think it might be, these bearings are the like conical type, so I can adjust the preload of them. So I've got to get in there and adjust the preload of that. It definitely didn't feel steering related, but we're gonna jack it up. Even though we're going to a dyno where we do not have to go speeds, I know as soon as this comes off the dyno, I'm gonna want to take it for a rip. So the front end needs to be very safe and dialed. So let's investigate this while that cools off, and we'll show you the sweet radiator I got. I found the problem. This wheel bearing's loose for sure. Pop the wheel off. I'll tighten up the hub. I'll show you how to do it. Wheels off. I've got the dust cap off. You can see here, my preload nut is loose. So I went ahead and pulled the cotter pin lock ring off of here, pulled the cotter pin out, and that play, what you were hearing and seeing is play in the hub, which I have Turbo 2 5-lug FC hubs on my car. It's play between that hub and the GSL SE spindle. So it's allowing, my rotor isn't, I don't have the screws in my rotor, but it's basically allowing what I'm showing you with the rotor. It's allowing the hub to move on the spindle, which is making my steering feel weird, which is also making it clunk really bad. So as far as tightening these, there's a bajillion different methods and ways and how tight people like them and how tight people do whatever. I usually snug it up, go like a quarter turn, make sure I can still spin it with like what I'm going to say average resistance, and then call it a day at that. So that might be, why they come loose every now and again, because I might not have them tight enough. But if you over tighten these, you're going to wear out that bearing. So might err on the side of mediocre between loose and tight. Check this out. So this is a direct replacement radiator from Champion, because RX7s are champions. 3-core OEM bolt-in piece. So you can buy this for your RX7. Even though mine's been modified, I modified it to accept an OEM part because, you know, sustainability. If you can't find parts for your car when you're stranded out in the middle of wherever you are at whatever racetrack, then like that sucks. The day is over. But if you have something that your grandmother bought an RX7 and you can go get her stock radiator out of it and bolt it in, even though it's not big and it's not going to work as well as this, your day's not over. You're not stranded. So, stock replacement deal. Champion doesn't offer like a prefabbed shroud for this thing. Champion doesn't offer a prefabbed shroud for the RX7 radiator to put like your electric fan on it. However, it is set up with all the bolts. They got little rib nuts in here to mount like an RX7 clutch fan shroud on this. Okay, now the radiator's thicker. You might have to trim the shroud for it to fit with your stock clutch fan. Just a forewarning. But for electric fans, there's nothing. I personally have yet to see that on a racetrack at speed, a shroud is necessarily the most important thing. I think that when you're driving your car on the street, it's going to overheat if your fans aren't sucking the maximum amount of air through the radiator. So, fans plural. Champion, they also had a bunch of different electric fan options. So these are 10-inch electric fans. It's almost perfect. The math almost works out if the bracketry around the outside of this fan, so the blades are 10 inches, but all the plastic around it's a little bigger. It fits perfectly up and down on here, but fans plural, I got 2 of them. I can't quite fit both of them on here, like flush down on the core itself, which is fine. These don't need to sit all the way down. And I'm not going to build a shroud for this. I'm just going to stick these fans on here with some foam under them, and we're going to run it. Because if you think about it this way, you're at a racetrack, you're ripping. That shroud at 120 miles an hour, all that's going to do is restrict your airflow, right? It's going to block the air from coming through the radiator. So if I was just going to run like one fan, you know, right in the center, just like this. We'll just say just like that because it fits super easy like this. I don't want to mess up my fins. You know, we don't have Calvin here, so our radiator's safe. But if I were to run one fan just like this, and you kick this fan on while you're sitting in traffic at a stoplight, it's going to need to suck air through the whole radiator to get that thing cool. But if I put a shroud around the outside of this in order to direct all the air through the fan, on track, now that shroud is restricting my flow, and it all has to go through the fan. I've seen people put flaps and stuff in their shrouds as well, which you can do. A little complicated. So we're just going to try it like this. We're going to run this nice window weather stripping foam. It's like 3/8 of an inch thick. I guessed correctly because the tabs on the side of this are about 3/8 of an inch tall. So the edge of my fan is actually going to rest on the aluminum on the side of this radiator for both fans. They're going to touch in the middle. The fan shroud pieces are. Okay. So it's going to rest on that outside piece. I'm going to put some foam under the fan between the radiator and the fan so that the air that the fan draws will all come through the fins. Nothing's going to go around the fan from behind the radiator and get sucked through, right? We're just sucking through the fan. So effectively, my fan shroud is just a perfect circle of what the fan is. And then all these extra space over here, you know, this triangle, these triangles in the middle, can allow the air to flow through whenever I'm at the track, full rip, raging. If I'm running into issues, we're on the street. If it's 100 degrees and I'm at a stoplight in my RX-7 with no AC, well then I'm overheating, and hopefully the car isn't because I've got 2 of them. So most likely, I probably won't put myself in a situation on the street where this thing is going to just be sitting there heat soaked, completely baked, right? Like it's a track car, guys. It comes out for Cars and Coffee maybe once, and if it's going to be questionable, I'll drive something that's more comfortable. We have other comfortable cars that don't overheat if it's going to be weird, but ideally it's not. So I think this should work just how we've, how I drew it up. And it's going to look pretty trick. It'd be nice, if you did have a nice aluminum sheet, then you could mount the fans to that. Unfortunately, fortunately, really it's the easiest thing to do is I've got those little like tab things that go through the fins of your radiator. I know it's not the best thing ever, but if you have them secured, it shouldn't really matter. Just because like if you have a fan fail and you need to take it off, most of the time, to get those pieces out can be a little cumbersome and it might mess up your fins even worse. Versus if you had these fans mounted on a shroud, you just unbolt the fan, put it back on the shroud. So 6 one way have it as the other. You guys pick how you want to do it, but this is how I'm going to do it. Stuff. Oh. I scratched it, but you won't be able to see it. Only I'm going to know about it. Dang it. Look at that thing all dressed up. Not quite 100% ready for the dyno, but we're getting closer. Catch can's refitted. I definitely need to make a new bracket for that. With how I had it mounted on the stock radiator, obviously there was no electric fan that close to it. So I had to slide the catch can out. It wiggles a little bit. It does fit right here. I just need to engineer some sort of a bracket that's stronger, which means I'll improve that after the dyno. For right now, it's not going to fall off. It would probably survive at the track like that, but I just don't want it to wiggle and hit anything or vibrate loose, considering there's only one bolt holding it on. The lines still work perfect. That the catch can's going to live in this area. I ran my fan wires down under the fans and up through the middle. I thought it looked a little cleaner like that. Albeit I should have mounted the fans the opposite way so the wires exited in the middle, because I kind of thought initially I would run the wire up over here past the catch can and do whatever looks cleaner that way. I've added the radium petcock for the catch can here, and then tuck the hose up on the bottom of the radiator there. So this Champion radiator has 2 ports on the bottom for an automatic RX7 if you had a transmission cooler. You know, if the car had power steering, you could use that for a power steering cooler, probably. They basically just loop themselves. It's its own little section, so I just don't have them hooked up to anything. I'm going to get some Dash 6 caps. That's the size of the fitting that those are, and I'll cap them off eventually. Not a huge deal for going to the dyno. The big thing, though, that is pretty much done, but I can't obviously hook it up correctly because I'm not tuned for it, is I have added my boost controller. So this is a simple 3-port MAC valve right here. I pre-wired the harness for the boost controller whenever I built the harness for this car about a year ago. So I just had to pull the 2 wires right here out of this where I knew it was going to go section of the harness. I added a little 2-pin Deutsch connector and ran the wires around the battery. So for now, boost controller is simply zip tied to this, battery tie down. This is where the boost controller is going to live. Most likely I'll weld a tab or put a bracket on my battery box for it. Just don't have a fancy bracket for it yet, but for now it's here. So I added a new port on my turbo system right underneath this intercooler pipe in this intercooler pipe. So I added a barb fitting, and that is going to send boost pressure to my wastegate. So I had the wastegate plumbed previously to this port right here on the intake manifold. Where there is an issue with that is that a wastegate shouldn't see vacuum pressure. So no wastegate stem seal, the big valve that's inside of it, is perfectly sealed. So what's happening is as my engine is pulling vacuum, it's actually sucking some exhaust back into the engine. I'm curious when I fire it up for the next time if being tuned with my wastegate hooked up like that is going to mess up my tune outside of boost. In boost, it's pushing pressure out. In vacuum, I wonder if it's going to cause any variation. So now it's hooked up here. The reason I had it hooked there is just because that port was available to go to the gate, and I didn't have a port in my compressor housing, so I added one here. That intercooler pipe's super thin, so I just drilled it, tapped it for 1/8 NPT, and then I 2-part epoxied / threaded the fitting in there and just let it ride. We'll see how it goes. But eventually, this black line here is actually going to run up here. There's going to be a T. One of the T's is going to go to the bottom of the gate. The other T is going to go to the top of the gate. And then that's how you would set up this wastegate in order to be electronically controlled by the boost. So I'm curious. I don't have a ton of springs. I have some springs here I'll take with me to the dyno. I'm curious how much boost we can get out of this. It has a 10-pound spring in it. I think we should be able to almost double that, if I'm not mistaken. So if we can double that and make 20 pounds, that's more than enough. Really shooting for the maximum effort on pump gas, which will be probably 15 to 16 pounds, will be what will be safe for pump gas on a rotary. I do have, IGN 1A coils. It is a pretty stout kind of hybrid block. Like, I'm not worried about necessarily breaking it, but detonation is the enemy. Really just want to turn the boost up so I know what it can make, and then it's going to get turned back down to basically what it's at right now. I may try to bring the boost in a little bit earlier just to wake it up sooner, try to help spool this big turbo a little bit. It's not even really big, but it's just bigger than a stock FC turbo, so it does hit a little later. But that'll be the main fun parts about going to the dyno, is getting that boost controller working, because then I can have my scramble button and hook up my little switch panel for the fuel tech so I can turn the boost up and down, and it'll be kind of neat. It's just exciting having something that's pretty much got all the nice modern goodies on it that I can then play with everything. So I'm super pumped. Also, the catch can came with a cooler radium sticker, so I'm going to switch out the one I've got. It's the little things. Is the car done enough to put the most inconvenient yet coolest looking part that I pretty much own for an RX-7 back on my car? So this is a Racing Beat strut brace. It's an original one. I know they just released some stuff that they're talking about remaking those, which will be cool, but I don't know how it's going to, affect the market or reissue versus original. So like if you're into guitars, there's like reissue Gibsons that match a 60s Gibson, etc., right? So like they just remake it just how they made it back then. I'm curious if it's going to, like, an original one's still going to be worth, because those things trade for a bunch of money. And then the new ones I think are like $500. So I'd be curious. My hands are dirty. But I'm stoked with how the radiator looks, stoked with how the fans look. I haven't done anything to address the oil leak yet. I think I'm going to try to tackle that tomorrow. So that's just going to get fixed in the background, but just know that, I'm going to drop the oil pan out. We're going to flush this oil. I'll probably end up including, any sort of abnormality about the oil in the next video, because we are going to be pulling the RX-8 in here and getting the RX-8 ready to go to the dyno as well. So get fired up for that. But I'm excited to... The engine bay looks sick now. I gave the intercooler pipes a little bit of a polish. I'm just on a roll polishing pipes up these days with doing the chrome one on that one and these. So pretty stoked for that. Everything seemed to be working from the test drive earlier today, so that's a huge win. And then I just need to bleed my clutch. I did tighten that fitting though, so we should be good there. Before I forget, I'm going to put a vacuum cap on the old wastegate port. Vacuum cap installed, capped, vacuumed. Good to go. Super pumped to rip this thing today. But I think, honestly, I'm confident enough I'm putting that brace on. So let's put this brace on real quick. The life of a 79 RX-7 owner. Got to go to the passenger side, because the hood prop's on this side, which I know you guys have been enjoying seeing under the hood of this the whole entire video, but I just had to pop the hood to show y'all the strut brace. It's just the look. It's like my favorite thing about an RX-7 engine bay is if you get one of these strut braces in there, especially if they're white. I didn't have any... My wheels are silver, my roll bar is silver, my door panels are silver, so I just went for silver. If I'd had a white one, it would have been, mega out of place, and I needed to paint it anyway, so it's silver. This is just a sticker. Albeit I wish I had one of the original Racing Beat raised plastic riveted on pieces, but those are even harder to find, especially because they crack and break and rotaries get hot and then melt and they fall off and stuff. So either way, super pumped with how it's all come together. Might as well hit the key, make sure both the fans come on, and make sure they're hooked up as polar fans and not pusher fans. I didn't wire them backwards, ideally. Oh, yeah. Man, those are throwing some serious air. Shoo! I can feel that all the way back here. It's pumped. So in the beginning, I went clutch fan because it was easier and it was just simpler. And I knew I wanted to go big radiator. I anticipated trying to build some sort of shroud for my clutch fan. But then this is literally... It's not that much harder or more complex to put electric fans on it. So, Jeff, there you go. Electric fans, plural, instead of the clutch fan. So, with that, guys, that's going to be in today's video. I would say the car's 95% ready for the dyno. The last bits of the things I need to do are just check over my fluids, bleed the clutch, fix my oil pan leak. Other than that, pretty much ready to go. When I fix the oil pan leak, we'll change the oil. I've got fresh plugs to put in it. The ones that were in it haven't been in there very long before it, decided to eat the front stationary gear bearing and ultimately hurt itself. They looked really good when I had the engine apart, so I put those in there for now. We'll start on those, and then I've got fresh ones in the box ready to go on mid dyno session. But think about it. This thing's already pretty much tuned. So we're not really going to be on the dyno like building a whole tune from scratch, right? We're going to be on the dyno, just hooking up the boost controller, seeing the numbers that this thing makes. We spent a good amount of time street tuning this car, and it drives real nice. So with that, guys, Letty's ready to go home. So am I. It's been a busy past couple days. We got the rotary truck done. So if you didn't see that video yesterday, go check that video out. This thing is sweet. We just painted the bay. Got the whole thing restored in about 6 days as far as the engine bay stuff. The truck was already looking nice. The 4-rotor, I get to go out to Defined AutoWorks this week and pick up the intake manifold, the header, and all of that stuff. So all of the fabrication work on that stuff's finally done. So I'm stoked to be able to basically, I'm going to do some work on the yellow RX-8 to go to the dyno too tomorrow. And then this is ready for the dyno. And I think, scratching my head, I guess I'll consult my big list over there, that after the dyno, I just have to swap the axle in this, and then we got to build the 4-rotor car before deal's cap. So get fired up because it's going to be busy. Thanks for watching. Keep it rad. We'll see y'all in the next one. Dang. It's so hard. I got to pick a spot to take a picture of this thing. I want to show off all my new shiny stuff in there, but the car itself just looks so good. Not entirely done with the livery though, so before deal's gap it's going to change a little bit. There's going to be some side stripe action going on this thing, so get excited for that. Peace, guys. Thanks for watching.